Now, the other story that I have to hear from your perspective is going over to his house and sitting there and watching Marvel tapes that end up being all those crazy ill skits.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a tweak to that story too, but basically one weekend, my good friend Koop, he had a hip hop clothing kind of brand label back in the day called Hoods and Heads. It's kind of regional, semi-regional thing. Some of the stuff made it out to the West Coast. That's my homie, still to this day. But he came down one weekend just to kick it because he lived in Nashville as well. I met him through the radio show as well, through Egon and Count, because he had just moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
Koop knew Mr. Dibbs. Mr. Dibbs knew Egon and Count and me, and kind of connected us all. So big up Mr. Dibbs, 1,200 hobos and all that. Anyway, Koop came down to kick it one weekend, and I think I'd been introduced to Doom like maybe a month prior or something like that. The details are fuzzy. Koop's gonna kill me because I'm not gonna get the story exactly right. He wanted to, he had some stuff. Koop was like a how can I describe him? He's kind of like a how Bismarck collects all kinds of stuff. Just pop culture stuff, Koop's kind of like a guy like that. So he collects he'll collect sports cards and sneakers and comic books and at the time VHS tapes and DVD tapes and obviously music and just all this, there was stuff and it was just his style, and he's an artist. He's an artist, like a painter, and super nice with the pen and pencil. Anyway, he had some things that, he knew that Doom was on the comic book shit. So before he came down, he was like, well, do you think that, we'd be able to, say what up to Doom? I'm like, well, we can try. I'm like, I'm not promising anything, but he's like, well, just tell him I've got some stuff for him that I think he'd like. And so, I guess Doom trusted me. I was, we were just kind of hanging out, and I was bringing records over and, whatnot. And so he's like, yeah, bring him by. We'll say what up, and, maybe we'll, get to hang out for 15 minutes and then we'll leave. Because I knew Doom was super private and I respected that, right? Which is, I think, why we got along, together so well. But anyway, so Koop came down for the weekend, and he brought this big box of VHS tapes, and it was just a ton of Marvel shit and a bunch of other things. Koop and I were working on some other things video related at the time. But we went over there, and Doom saw the box of tapes, and he was like, "Come in." And so we just end up hanging out there for 4 or 5 hours this one night. The little tweak to the story is I don't think we watched Marvel tapes all night, but I think Jay got the story twisted up a little bit. But what we did do, and what was crazy ill for him to do at the time, and thinking back on it, I don't know that I would have. I might have shot this idea down now, just being older and hindsight, having some perspective on this. But he's like, Doom, I have something for you. I want to play it for you real quick. And he didn't tell him what it was. Doom always had the TV on. Every time I was over to his crib, he always had the TV on and something was playing, even if the sound wasn't on. He's like, can I pop this in? He's like, yeah, sure. So Koop pulls his tape out, pops it in. And I knew what it was, but Koop didn't tell him. And it was the Spring Break performance of KMD. That was just so Doom bugged the fuck out, because I think maybe his brother's in that footage,
Yeah.
So like that's why, yeah. So that's why subs in that footage, and like you know, I don't think. I mean, I was, you know, what I wasn't even 25 at the time, right? So I wasn't thinking about that. I'd never been through anything traumatic like that in my life. You know what I mean? Like I would never do that today, right? But thankfully, it did. It didn't rub him the wrong way, and I think he saw that as like a super like. He knew what kind of cloth we were cut from, and like, just ended up hanging out and just kicking it for like 6 hours. And he played us all kinds of music he was working on, and again, we were just listening to records and drinking and just, you know, whatever. So just so ill. So anywho, so I'm sorry I'm so long-winded, but
I love it.
The story with the tapes though is that a majority of the tapes that were used in MM Food came from that box of tapes that Koop took over to him.
That's crazy.
So if you look on the back of the MM Food CD or vinyl, I don't know where it's at exactly in the vinyl. I know where it's at on the CD for sure, but it says special thanks to Koop, or it says something like that. It's totally randomly at the bottom of the.
Super random.
And that's Koop.
Especially if you have no idea who Koop is. And how would you find Koop? What did Koop do? What part of this did he play? But
I mean, but again, it's like
that's very Doom.
Exactly, right? Like, you know, he didn't have to do that, right? Like, you know, even like when he passed, like, I made one post about it, and I was just like, he really did a lot for us, and really didn't have to. You know, he didn't know us from Adam. Like, he was inviting us into his house, and you know, he did that for Koop. I mean, you know, he gave me a joint for my producer project. He gave us a joint for the Prophetics record. Like, he didn't have to do any of that. Yeah. So, you know, it was, you know, he looked out for us when he didn't have to.